Today's the 20th, right?
Well, welcome to this June 20th post-service discussion. Today we're talking about my service, which was Sympathy for the Devil, ? So Sharon was good enough to get us started.
Well, I had a little trouble following along and my mind wandered, which is good in some regards. I was curious that I observed, Michael, that you have this bent towards ancient teachings
Yeah.
that are masculine.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, and I wondered if you could comment, and then I have another comment after I let you comment.
Well, I suppose that probably the biggest reason for that is that I am a male myself. And I mean, I could dig a bit deeper than that. Throughout my adult life, I've primarily been responsible for teaching young women. That's been the primary focus of my world as a music educator. And I have come to the conclusion that if you are a young woman in today's society, you have oceans of support, right? You have an entire world that is rooting for you to succeed. And young men don't have that. Young men have been largely left behind by our society. And so,
Agreed.
yeah, and so in my adult life, I have tried to focus on being a better mentor to young men, and that has led me to study what is noble about things that are traditionally masculine. Now, of course, I had a very deep interest in like the heroic stories of the Greek mythologies and the Norse mythologies and all of those things, which are very patriarchal societies, and so their literature reflects that. And because I loved it for so long of my life, that's filtered to through the way that I think about things now. But I wouldn't want to discount what is beautiful about the feminine too. I think that it's a yin yang kind of thing, that we need both. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, it does, and it reminds me of some things you've said in the past, but it was just very noticeable to me today.
yeah, it's true. And I suppose one of the things that I want to do in a future talk is why I keep talking about Star Trek, is I'm absolutely enamored by the Janeway character in Star Trek Voyager. That when the writers were creating her, and Jane Mulgrew, who played the character, when it came to the writing and the portrayal of that character, it would have been very easy to just write a male captain of the ship and then put a female in that position of power. And they didn't do that at all. The Captain Janeway character is everything to me that's beautiful about feminine leadership. That that a woman in position of power brings something different to the table than men in positions of power. And I do think we ought to encourage that. But yeah, it's true that when I go to my basic teachings, yeah, it is the masculine stories.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned motion pictures. Which Star Trek was this that you're talking about?
Voyager.
Voyager.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to look that up because I am new to all of this. I don't know what you call it when you don't have TV, but you use the TV to view other things.
Right, yeah.
And that's what I'm diving into. And I've noticed everything I choose to watch seems to have a female lead.
Yeah.
And so maybe Hollywood is the balance for what you need.
It could be. And if I'm being fair, right? you know, at a time where women leaders in the world were prominent, you know, so if you think of like Queen Elizabeth all the way to Margaret Thatcher, um, women leadership in media was not super prevalent, right? So I do think that society, in a way, is playing catch up to the historical.
However, you're saying that young men don't have the, what was your word?
Well,
The
they don't have the support.
guidance, the support.
Yeah, the
Yes.
support systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, oh, okay. Well, Glennis, you were reticent to speak. You were next. Did do you want to?
If somebody wants to speak
Okay.
exactly to that, that would be
Yeah.
all right.
Let's do Lurley and then Martha, and then we'll come back to Glennis and I'll harp on her. All right.
Well, today being Father's Day, and I didn't realize that Michael was giving the talk, I expected something along the masculine line,
Okay,
just
fair enough.
because it's Father's Day. So looking back on your talk, I think it was very appropriate to go the masculine line for today.
Yeah.
That's all. I just.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was last year that Joe Messinger did the Wisdom of Fathers talk,
Yeah.
which was quite moving.
Yeah.
You know,
He
and
worked very hard on that. It
yeah,
was- yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I guess today it's a manly day today.
Right.
Paul and me, you know, we're
What-
there we go. Go ahead, Mark.
What I wanted to say to add to the conversation regarding maleness versus femaleness,
Mhm.
for so long, it was a male dominated world.
Mhm.
But there was a certain type of role model for young men.
Mhm.
It was a strong, stiff upper lip, yada, 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 yada. And as things have softened to go into a more of emotional realm, which we really need to do to go through our feelings and see why things happen that way. I don't think that there were a lot of older males who were able to do that.
Right.
Also, the disintegration of the primary family models. So often, this is what's happened. The fracture of families due to whatever reason, economics, jobs, yada yada, a whole 9 yards. I think also the fact that there's been such a upsurgence in female. I know for me, it wasn't until my 40s that I realized I had power.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Because I lived in a male dominated world. I was married to pharmaceuticals. I was married to corporate. I had a role, and it was a definite role. And it wasn't until I learned that I had power. I mean, I always had it, but I fought it. You know, everybody fought me, pushed me down.
Yeah.
So I think there's a big trend in recognizing the strength of women, and there should be a balance. I'm not saying there should be more than others, but we also have, if you look at world leaders, the League of Women Voters did a wonderful video, or they shared it, I should say, of all the women in the world who are leaders of countries.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to me to see how many, and the difference in a way a woman leads a country versus the way a male. And I think we need a balance. I'm not saying we should go all male or all female. I think we should have equality and look at both sides, because people do things differently.
Well, and of course, from my perspective, the most important thing in choosing leadership is merit, right?
Yes,
that
exactly.
that if
Not
we
just
were
the sex.
if we were to choose a leader just because they're male or just because they're female, then we're shooting
No.
ourselves in the foot.
No,
but-
I agree with that. Yes.
And we do have to acknowledge that there was a practicality to the role of women versus the role of men in previous
Yes.
societies, because it's only been relatively recently in human history that survival is for the most part guaranteed, right? And we have to take that into account, when we're looking at the history of the family and how people functioned in the family. Take, for instance, you know, the role of the farm owner.
Mhm.
Couples who ran farms did not have children because they saw children as this beautiful emergence of new life to continue the species. I mean, maybe they did, but no, they had children because they needed workers. You know,
That's
and so the woman tending to the home before the advent of, you know, washing machines and dishwashers and, you know, running water and all of these things that we take for granted, let alone the idea of birth control, it would be very hard for a woman
Mhm.
to assume any kind of leadership role
exactly.
if she wanted her family to thrive. Now, there were great examples of women who did, you know, throughout history, and those are beautiful examples, and, you know, we ought to teach them. But I think that, especially on the modern political left, they're quick to look back on history with this sense of disdain, you know,
Mhm.
and without acknowledging the sheer, you know, terror that existence presented us, you know, which informed a lot of the social roles that we took.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
I just feel that the biggest problem that we were talking about, the primary problem is that since there's been a shift,
Mhm.
there's a lot of young boys who are not getting there's a big void. It was the stiff upper lip or go into
Yep.
sports competition,
Right.
competition. If you weren't like that, you didn't fit.
You were
And
like
that's the
me.
that's I mean that's the problem. Yes,
Yeah.
I mean you're not the problem, but you know that's
Well,
what I see is, and I saw it in education and the parents that would come in, and you know it was very predictable how the dad would respond.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Many, I
also,
shouldn't say that, you know, that was an exaggeration, but you
no,
know.
no. Well, I think it's a fair exaggeration. You know, I am not a fan of the term of toxic masculinity, but any trait which, you know, when it's used in a modicum, right? Like, competitiveness can be a
Yes,
beautiful thing,
yeah,
but man, we've all met those people that take it way too far. And those people who take competition way too far are insufferable. You don't want to be around them, you
that's
know,
right.
because yeah, because everything's a competition. And you find that those people have very few friends. Those people make terrible leaders, you know, those people and so, you know, when it comes to the way that men fit into our society these days, you know, we also have to take into account that we don't really need each other current in the same way that we needed each other, you know, men and women 100 years ago. Uh,
Exactly.
and so, you know, for those men of like 3, 4, 5 generations ago, the stiff upper lip, the competitiveness, that individual knew how they fit in society. That's not the case now, you know,
That's
where,
correct.
yeah,
That's
where we,
correct. Mhm.
and so yeah, there we got a lot of work to do, you know, because we've changed the environment so much, and now we have to adapt to the environment that we've created.
And if I could say one more thing, if men would get used to talking about how they feel,
Okay,
I'm fortunate that I'm
right,
married to one. You know, that was on my list of top 10 traits,
yeah,
someone who has had therapy, who knew who they were. You know, you might not like everything, but you know where you know where you are. You know the person, the person is not afraid to say, you know, I'm feeling that.
yeah.
And you work together. That's basically.
And this is how, and I see Edith, and this is how we solve that problem. I can solve that
Mhm,
problem for you, and that is in efficacy.
mhm, mhm,
Men will talk about the way they feel if they believe there's some benefit to doing so. And if they
mhm,
believe that by talking about it, they
mhm,
will be able to find a solution, right?
mhm,
The
mhm.
reason that men clam up and they don't share their feelings is because they believe that worst case scenario, it will hurt them because then people find their weaknesses and exploit those,
Exactly, exactly.
or
Yes.
B, it serves no purpose. So, yeah,
Transactional mainly.
yeah. So, Edith.
Yeah, I just wanted to say what Martha said. That was going to be a similar comment, that I raised two boys, and for so many centuries, I guess, males have been raised. Actually, they were encouraged not to show their feelings.
Mhm.
It wasn't manly to cry or to say that they were sad or whatever. And that's probably still now to a certain degree the case. I'm not sure, but you have to tell when you're raising males, you have to tell them, no, it's okay. It's okay. You're very sad and you're crying. There's nothing to be ashamed of. But boys don't cry and boys don't do this and boys don't, so
That's old school.
are they not human beings with the same kind of emotional stresses that we all have?
Yeah.
And I
Um,
think maybe that's getting a little better in society. I'm not sure.
Well, I do have a response for that, but Glennis, you seemed like
Go
you
ahead
had-
on the response and then I'm right after you.
okay. The only problem with this that I want to say this delicately, there are no shortage of young women, and let's say women under the age of say like 40 or 30, who will confess immediately and without, unbashfully, will say that the day they saw their male mate break down in tears or afraid was the day they lost all sexual interest in them.
Really?
Yeah, this is
What?
Mhm.
What?
You all act surprised. Yeah,
Yeah.
you all act surprised, but trust, this is a well-documented phenomenon.
Is
Right.
it for younger women? I
Yeah.
mean,
40 and under.
Yeah.
okay.
And it is well documented, extremely well documented, that when
Okay.
wives start to earn more money than their husbands, they lose all sexual interest in
Yeah,
their
that's
husband.
true.
Yeah. And so, again, we've created this new society with these new ways for people to live, but we haven't adapted either, emotionally or psychologically to the changes that we've made. So just throwing that out there.
Well,
Okay, Glennis.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's all yours, Glenn.
I think I was fortunate in two different ways as I was growing up. First of all, I came of age at the time that we were at the time of Gloria Steinem and burning bras and all of that. So we knew that we could do pretty much whatever, we wanted to, or at least we could say we would go for that. But the other part of that is that I had a father who did not see gender when it came to handing out chores.
Mhm. I had one too.
I had to help build a house. I had to garden at a young age. So what it really taught me, even though at the time it was like, I just don't want to do this. It was, I'm glad that he did, because again, I had taken on roles later in life that are primarily actually male, that it just doesn't matter. I don't see it one way or the other. And then to be raised in that era, it was empowering. It really was, to grow up with that. The other thing is a different direction. So if you want to keep commenting in this direction, I'll wait.
Well, no, I find that I find that very fruitful. Why don't you go ahead and take us somewhere else?
Well, in your discussion about the devil,
Mhm.
I, as many of you know, I read tarot, tarot cards, and the devil in the deck really doesn't stand for, it does kind of stand for evil, but it really stands more for being chained to something that doesn't serve you. And
Well,
to
mhm.
me, my whole concept of the devil changed completely when I started reading these things, because to me, that's actually a true case. It's something you're stuck with. It's something you're chained to. You can't let it go or heal from it or anything.
Do you know why that is? Why the devil represents that in tarot?
Well, it has actually several different meanings, but that is one of the main readings for it. In other words, it can represent evil, or it could represent someone who is less than angelic. It could, or I mean, it could represent a person in your life that you're addicted to unhealthily, for example.
Right.
So there's a lot of different kind of aspects of it that it kind of depends on what's going on with the rest of it. But
Yeah, because when you were saying, I took a tarot class, which I remember nothing from. But
Hmm.
when you were saying that, I was imagining, like, because Satan, or the devil transgresses against God, and then he's bound to the underworld or to hell, that could be how that correlation is made, that he can't escape it.
it might be because that's actually the truth of the stories, that, or if you want to go with truth, I guess, but that's kind of what the meaning of the stories were about, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to look further into. I'd be curious
Mhm.
about that.
I will.
Can I- yeah. Can I call on people? I know, I think, Kim, you have more than a few opinions about the devil.
Well, yeah, I believe in the devil. He was Lucifer, who was an angel and disagreed with God, and God kicked him out along with a bunch of other angels and earthbound him. So now he goes around causing us friction and sin and so yeah, I definitely believe in a devil, Satan, coming around causing lots of trouble in our lives.
Right? And how do you deal with that from your religious perspective?
Well, fortunately, we had Jesus die for us to help us with our sins, and you do a lot of praying.
Yeah.
And read the Bible a lot to make sure, you always talk about Job, and I'm like, yeah, there's Job, Isaiah, boy.
Yes.
We've been doing Bible study on Isaiah forever, and it's like, wow. I came in on the middle of it. I'm like, wow, just wow.
Yeah, I was like, for preparing for this talk, I was like, I'm gonna read Isaiah beginning to end, and that lasted for about 20 minutes. And
I'm like,
yeah.
God's wrath really big in Isaiah.
Yeah. So if it's okay, let me press you just a little bit, because you believe in a literal Satan, right? Like, Satan is a being, he exists in the world, and he has an effect, or he can have an effect on us as individuals, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So
Yeah.
So does that then weaken the idea of our own personal responsibility in your religion, in your theology, right? Like, could somebody say the devil made me do it, and that would be a reasonable excuse?
No, because we are supposed to be reading the Bible and, praying to God and asking for his help against a Satan.
Okay.
Because we believe in you have to actually try to do the best you can with what you have in the sinful world, but you're not alone. You have God to help you throughout it all.
So
And
okay.
Sometimes they say if Satan's coming around you, maybe you're not with God as much as you should be.
Okay. So Satan is there, and he can tempt you, but only you can make the decision to follow Satan.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Cool. Edith, did I see your hand go up? I couldn't tell.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, if you remember it, yep,
Yeah.
go for it, Paul. It's all you.
Oh, no, yeah,
Oh.
I did.
Oh,
Just
you did.
wanted to say
Okay,
that
go ahead.
really, what Gladys was talking about it, and what you said in your sermon was sort of, overlapping.
Mhm.
That one way to look at what we call Satan, is to, like you said, it's these temptations and it's these, and that, yeah, is Satan. It doesn't matter what you call it, but we have to realize that you can have all the best intentions, but there are physical needs, there are physical things that will make you do things that you wish you hadn't done. And it's one way to call, whatever you call that, you can call it Satan, and what Glenna said to it is kind of like, it's kind of on the same level, whether you believe there is this incarnate being that's floating around them and making us do things, or you believe, but basically you have to take responsibility, and you have to, first of all, I think you have to be aware.
Yes.
I think awareness is, if we're just stumbling through life and doing things and never think about it, you have to have the awareness to say, is the devil making me do this? If you believe in the devil, or, why do I want to do that? It's not right. It's not moral. It's not. And basically what I'm saying is you have to catch yourself and consider it and be aware of your actions. Are they on the same level as your beliefs? Not always, So that's the way I think about it.
Yeah.
And it might take 50 years for us to realize that. I mean, but hopefully we do realize that.
Let's do a quick poll, right? How many of you have had this experience? Something made you so angry that you lost control. And
Oh God.
and in that period where you lost control, it was like you were an outside observer, right?
Mhm.
Watching your actions, not able to change them. Oh no, we lost Paul. So you've never had that experience, Sharon? Or
I have.
oh, you have. Okay, yeah. And what
Paul-
else?
Paul didn't want to confess.
I guess not. I feel bad because he was next.
Oh.
But
We'll be back.
this is an example, I think, a very literal example of possession.
Mhm.
And because
Wait, Define possession. You mean
Well,
being possessed?
being possessed by a spirit of anger,
Okay.
right? And because we all share this experience, we have to recognize that capacity exists within us. So Edith, it's like you were saying, that you have self-awareness is such a vital part of our development, as spiritual beings, as physical beings, as members of a community, as fathers, mothers, that it's vital, I guess. And also, it's a reason to talk about our feelings, right? If we go back to the masculine, idea of like not wanting to talk about your feelings, that as a way to gain control over those lesser impulses. Let's see, Paul is almost back.
Oh, there.
Not there.
No.
Connecting.
Mm.
We're all waiting on pins and needles for you, Paul.
Well, I'm
Sorry.
curious about other people in the poll. I'm the only one that confessed.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, Kim's hand up.
Well,
Edith.
Okay.
I've been angry because of my grief with God. That's one reason why I went back to church after I moved here. Because I had very angry feelings because he took my husband away. And I know it's wrong to think that, and I'm less angry now, but I did have a lot of anger.
That's not wrong.
Yeah,
Anger is part of grief. It's one of the stages of grief.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
There he's Paul. Yay.
How could God take my husband? How could he do this to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul's there.
All right, Paul.
Back?
All right, well, my tablet decides when it wants to shut down, so sorry about that interruption.
It's all your fault.
The devil made it do it.
That's right.
I was gonna say, did you hear the one about the devil worshiper who was dyslexic and ended up worshiping Santa.
Oh,
Excuse me.
Anyway, I think that the devil is the embodiment of all that is the dark side of human nature. I think over the centuries, the devil has formed more and more into like a physical embodiment. The guy with the tail and the horns and the red, you know, I don't know how many representations of the devil. It's that guy. But I think that really the devil is all the dark side of our human nature that
Mhm.
we'd really rather not own. And so our temptations and things that the devils are doing is basically our own psyche pulling us along that way.
yeah. And so in your phase of religious belief, do you believe in a literal Satan, or is it more the figurative?
No, I don't believe personally that there is a
Oh,
I believe, like I say, Satan is our dark side
Mhm.
that keeps us from the path of righteousness. And I mean, when I say righteousness, I'm talking about like all the different principles of the church are things that, you know, that's the right path to be on in life. And
Mhm.
it's easy to get swayed along the journey of life, you know, by different things. But no, I believe that this is hell. This is as close to hell as we get.
Oh,
I, I think that,
existential.
huh?
You're existential.
Yes. And so whatever happens after here is not hell. So, but I think that this is the battleground where we learn our life lesson, have these
Yeah.
things like being tempted by the devil, and you know, you have a choice to go that route or to try to make mankind a better society,
Right.
better life, better world.
Well, and I think that's what we were trying to get across with that Haile Selassie quote,
mhm,
about
yeah.
can we find a new allegiance, right? Can we find a new allegiance to each other as brothers and sisters in humanity? You know, yeah. Glennis,
Well, I was only going to add that the other meetings of the devil in the tarot deck is obsessive, secretive, impulsive behavior. It's a
Mhm,
signifier of materialism
Mhm.
mhm.
and shows that you might be stuck with more material things than you should be. So it still, again, is an attachment to things that isn't serving you or
right.
anyone else, basically.
But again, all of those things can be beneficial, to our survival. It's when that crosses into the obsessive,
Yes,
that it becomes harmful.
yes.
you know just out of curiosity, has anybody seen the Lucifer television show? Let me I Okay, wait, there we go. I just did a quick, I think I don't know, is it
Oh,
on
okay.
NBC, or I can't
Yes, I've
remember.
seen ads, but I've never watched it.
So what's interesting about
Hot as hell.
Check that out.
yeah, hot as hell. Yeah. um he The show is based off of a comic book, where it's a comic book that's actually a spin-off of another comic book. It's Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, and it's one of the most profound and in-depth comic books you could ever read. It's the main character is the Sandman, the person who occupies the realm of dreams, and his name is actually Dream inside of the comic books. It's a beautifully written series. but inside of those characters, Lucifer is a character. And in one of the comic books, Dream, the Sandman, has to go down to hell to free a former lover of his, and finds that Lucifer's decided to give up hell. And Dream has to cut off his wings so that Lucifer can leave hell, and he goes to Los Angeles and opens a nightclub. That's the and so the Lucifer television show picks up off of that he's running his nightclub in Los Angeles, and gets into trouble.
That sounds like a great premise.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary series of books, and Neil Gaiman is probably one of the biggest aficionados of world mythology that there is. He wrote a spectacular book cataloging Norse mythology, that and it's just it's called Norse mythology, and if it's like, it's a thick book, it's sizable, but once you start reading it, it's like a page turner. You can't put it down. It's fantastic. So that was that portrayal was a big inspiration for this talk, because the character in the Lucifer television show is he's very arrogant, and he is very hedonistic, ultimately hedonistic. That he has enormous sexual appetites. He smokes cigarettes, he drinks a lot, but he's beautiful. The actor that they chose is this unbelievably handsome, charming British man. So he's very good at embodying this character of temptation, but he's also sad because he's to blame for everything that's wrong with the world, where he's like, I didn't do anything. This is not, your suffering is not my fault. How dare you bring that on me? So anyway, if you get a chance, the TV show strays from the comic books quite a bit, but it's worth watching.
So is it a series or is it a streaming thing? I mean,
yeah, it was on television. I think it's still on television, but
Okay.
it's on Netflix.
okay, it's on Netflix. You could you go back to the beginning on Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'd have to do. All right, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Anytime. I guess there's always the Good Place too, right? The television show.
Oh yes, the good.
has-
You talk about that a
Yeah.
lot.
Well,
Okay.
once.
I wanted
there's-
to.
Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead,
go
Martha. Sorry.
I just wanted to go back to how you presented the sermon. I always enjoy all of the myths and the stories and the, how things came to be, if you will. And it fills in lots of little holes in my, I don't know, I have this brain that needs little holes filled. Uh, a- and it really, it broadens your understanding of world religions and how everybody was trying to solve the same problem.
Right.
Every piece of the world. Of course, that's a whole nother discussion. But I do appreciate your sharing of the stories. I just wanted to make that little.
Well, yeah, thank you. I, a lot of times these talks are ways for me to share things that I'm passionate about.
Mhm.
So like if I went to a bar and sat down with a group of people and said, let me talk to you for 30 minutes about my favorite, they'd be,
They
they'd
go,
be ru-
oh my goodness.
yeah, running
Oh.
through the exit. But the
And
church
the
is kind
fact
of
that
yeah.
Yeah.
it's
The
a
fact you
Catholic-
can pronounce all those words perfectly.
well,
Yes, you do speak that.
I had some help, but you were talking about like solving the same problems. There is in history what we call the axial age, and the axial age, is a span of a couple hundred years, where most of the great religious and mythological texts were written. And so there was like this seemingly awakening in human consciousness where people were trying to tackle, some of the big issues regarding life.
Mhm.
And so you were talking about, Martha, people
Yeah.
trying to solve the same problems.
Right.
it's
in
kind
every part of the world. Yeah.
it's kind of a parallel to our political strife now. You know, when you
Mhm.
think about it, that if you are liberal or conservative in today's society, chances are we can all agree on what the problems are, right?
Mhm.
Where the disagreement starts and where things tend to fall apart is how do we
How do we fix it?
how do we solve the problem
Yeah.
now? You know, and I wish that in our political discourse that maybe we could take a second to remind ourselves, look, there are things that we agree on, you know,
Mhm.
right
Mhm.
and left. We should be able to agree that ethnic minorities in America have not gotten a fair shake,
You bet.
you know, right?
That's
Where we
right.
disagree is like what to do with it. It's like we were talking
Mhm.
about the role of women before, you know, the, and yeah, it's just, I think if we focused on what we agreed on, we would have less strife, hopefully. Yeah, go ahead, Edith.
I just wanted to say that I remember taking a philosophy course in college, and it was called Religions of the World.
That's awesome.
And when you look at all religions, there is a basic tenet. I'm going to say one sentence: be good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Be moral. You know.
Good. Yeah.
Golden
I'm-
rule.
Yeah, and then when I was in my 20s, I was dating a Jewish man. We didn't get married, but that had to do with his family.
Mm.
And he said to me, I'm Jewish. And I'm like, well, okay, whatever. And he said, when you think about, and he said that a long time ago before I was in college, he said, when you think about religions, all religions basically say that. Be moral, be good, love your neighbor, and on and on. Don't cheat on your husband or your wife, and on and on. There is this basic, thing in all religions. How we get there is a different thing.
Yeah.
And you can find answers in all religions. Back to what Glennis said about how we are attached, it seems, at least in this age, to these the possessions. We have to have the new car because the neighbor got a new car, whatever. Jesus, talks about, he tells us not to be attached to wealth and all this, and fame and all this stuff. Didn't he say, he said, like, I can't quote where it is in the Bible, but I remember that he said that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to heaven, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So the similar things you'll find in all kinds of different religions. And when we are aware of that, when we realize that, we see, oh, look, yeah, they're saying that too. Then I think it's easier for us also to accept other people from other beliefs.
Yeah. It's true. And the quote about the camel going through the eye of the needle, it's like, if you think about that, it's not to say that there are no rich people who are virtuous, because there are. I've met people who are very wealthy, and they live very simple, strangely simple lives in some cases. But what in my opinion, what Jesus was talking about when he said that is that if money and wealth and status become your God,
Mm-hmm.
then you cannot enter the kingdom of the real God.
Like the golden calf.
Yes, exactly. Right.
The golden calf, and also the money changers in the temple, all that.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Monty.
Psychologically, it boils down to how you go about it. There's 2 points of view: an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. I happen to feel that we as Unitarians believe in an internal locus of control with a guiding set of principles, where other ways of going about it is all these restraints and these things make me do X, Y, Z. And that's a basic difference how people do approach, you know, what works for them.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that,
and
it boils down to that.
yeah, and moving back to you know, the male female dichotomy, you know, there are cultures in this world who believe that if we allow women to share their beauty, to show their beauty, to show their faces and their hair, and you know, then either, you know, men will not be able to control themselves around them,
Yeah,
or that you
that
know,
is,
lust will,
yeah.
and so it's like we're doing something noble by forcing women to cover up. You know, it's because we care about them, right? And that is, you know, by definition, I think that external locus of control, as
That's
opposed.
male dominance control is what it
Well,
is.
sure,
basically.
but
It's subconscious male dominance.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. You know, but from their perspective,
Exactly.
it's like we are protecting you.
That
Whereas,
goes back to the Bible too.
Mhm.
Eve
Yeah.
was the bad person.
the temptress, right?
She
Yeah.
tempted. Yeah, she
Yes.
was the temptress. Yeah.
Well, you know,
And the snake was the
Yep.
devil, I guess.
yeah.
Don't wear those skirts short. Yeah, the guys are not gonna be able to
Right.
put up with it.
I know, and the thing is that a lot of people will say that, well, Eve was framed, Eve was, you know, that unfairly maligned in that story. But I think if you read the story, the person who comes out the worst is Adam, because he, you know, because as soon, and this is what Jordan Peterson says, he's like, as soon as God discovers what he did, Adam looks around and says, Eve made me do it.
The
You know,
devil
so
made you do it.
yeah, he's this, yeah, he is. He's the sniveling coward at that moment in the story. So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. Sharon wanted to chime in.
Oh, well, not on the heels of this. I just
Oh.
want to get it in before the end.
Even for the end.
Yeah, I
Right,
don't know
so
where the
you-
conversation can go
okay.
from here.
Well, I felt like after I waded through all of the mythology and the stories of the sermon, the nugget was how you concluded.
Mhm. Yeah.
It aligns with what I've had to live with.
Hmm.
So if we are divine beings, we are capable of compassion, even if those who have transgressed against us wouldn't extend the same compassion to us, but that someday they will.
Right. That
Mhm.
if we can live by example.
Again, goes back to Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
The,
Well,
Yeah.
I think it goes back to any religious,
Yeah. Yeah.
spiritual believing, any path.
Right.
It's-
I mean, you could take the Buddha story, you know, where the Buddha is, he's giving a talk and a man comes up and spits on him, right? And then, you know, and Buddha says, now what? You know, you spit on me. I'm not, you know, meaning I'm not going to retaliate. And the man goes home and feels shame and comes
Mhm.
back and apologizes to the Buddha. And the Buddha's response is, the man that you spit on no longer exists. And you, as the man, the man who spit, no longer exists. You know, so it's this idea of like divine forgiveness, the same kind of divine forgiveness that we see in the Jesus story, where there is nothing you can do that will separate you from God's love, right? That no matter what you do, you can seek forgiveness. And you know, that's where we have what we have in the Sermon on the Mount is Father, forgive us as we forgive those who trespass against us. And I've gotten really good at reciting Sermon on the Mount working for the Methodists.
I bet you have.
So, Michael, I thank you for the sermon
Oh,
and also for the concluding words
thank you.
from Helen Keller.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it.
Right.
That's right. Really powerful stuff.
That makes all the difference.
It
What a
does.
remarkable woman she was.
Yeah, well, again, you know, that here is an individual who by all rights should have never been able to achieve anything,
Right.
you know. And
Amazing.
Could have
yeah,
been-
sorry,
and could have been bitter.
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true.
Kudos to Anne Sullivan.
Yeah, Is that,
Oh, yes,
Exactly.
yes, absolutely. My goodness.
Yeah.
Like Laura Lee Wheeler.
but
Oh,
you know, and again, you know, you could take that back to the idea of like when we were talking about feminine leadership, you know, but that regardless of what hand you're dealt, you have a choice. You know, you have a choice in how to play that hand. And you know, for those of us who have maybe been encountering the ideology that says if you were born a certain race, you know, then that makes you automatically not privileged or privileged or you know, um, that one of my fears is that in teaching children uh, this idea of like racial awareness or racial equity, critical race theory, all of these things, is that we are communicating an idea that how you're born determines everything in your life. And I hope that we, you know, we can tell stories like Helen Keller, or like what a million other people whose names escape me, you know, to say that you can achieve and you can overcome.
That's that song.
Yeah.
We shall
Oh yeah. We
overcome.
shall overcome. Yeah.
We shall overcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of hymns that I want to get back to when we're meeting in person.
When
I
are we
play.
meeting in person?
Oh, we have to find that out. But
What do you think about starting choir, just an ad hoc, ad hoc
yeah,
choir
it's
of once a week?
I would love it. I would love that idea.
Why don't we talk about that?
Mhm. I
I'm-
got to play This Little Light of Mine at the Methodist
Oh.
Church today.
Oh,
Yeah, and
and Malene wasn't there to hear it either.
no,
That's
no,
her
sadly.
favorite hymn.
But
Yeah.
they're not used to hearing it the way that I play it.
Oh,
And
good.
so, but it was a ton of fun, you know, and I was
Good.
like, and the whole time playing it, I was like, God, I wish I could be at the UU doing this. So
Okay, well, let's talk
I
about
play
that.
that with my kids all the time.
yeah,
We
Yeah.
could,
Church
we
kids.
could start meeting, you know, and just inviting people to come, maybe on Fridays or whenever we decide, and then see, that would be a start, because that would give us a chance to try some things out. And that would be
Agreed.
anybody who would want to come. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, whether you can sing or not.
I can't sing.
It doesn't matter.
doesn't
But
matter.
Well, I can't, my voice is sometimes here and sometimes there. It depends on what day it is. So I would be there in person, but I
Yeah.
love to be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Cool.
try that out.
Okay.
And maybe we can put an announcement in the UpQuest, maybe like in July sometime we could start that.
That's a good idea.
How's that? Okay.
Sounds great.
Are you in, Glennis?
Absolutely.
So
Know that.
I'd like to give an opportunity to anybody who had anything else. You don't have to, but
Um,
go for it.
I-
Yeah.
I did have a kind of a comment question
Mhm.
from when we were talking about how women are now in leadership roles and how younger men are kind of sniveling idiots, and I don't know what you want to call them, but all these roles changing. And my question is, what does that do to all of our families?
Mhm.
It seems like our families are not doing too good. So we have to figure out how to have what we want and still have a family intact.
Right.
But
And
there's different definitions of family today, and that's the
true.
deal too, because it's no longer the traditional mother, father, kiddos.
Yeah, and
Right.
I don't care about that part. I just want kids to have a stable
Exactly, a
family.
loving home, yeah.
A lot
I
of
agree.
kids don't, and
know.
it's really sad.
and
Yep.
I'm like a minority in this area because my parents have been married, love each other to death to this day, 56 years now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
And
parents. were
I'm a
married when Patrick-
minority.
Yeah.
I was in a college class and it was a summer class. There's like 15 people there. And the teacher asked whose parent is together. And I was the only child that raised my hand, who raised their
Wow.
hand. Everyone else had the parents that were divorced. And she looks at me, she's like, well, are they happily married? I go, oh yeah. Because they're just totally happy with you. If they're not together, they're just bummed, it's just.
Yeah. And that is a beautiful thing when it happens, for people to maintain that kind of a close relationship throughout their whole life. I think Dennis would say yes, and the idea that if we can foster strong nuclear families, then we should. But at the same time, we should be welcoming and accepting of more diverse family structures as well. And I think that would stem the tide of kind of some of the negative aspects of the society. I can tell you, as a teacher in an alternative high school, I have seen the result of neglected and unwanted kids. And it is a awful thing to overcome, so, and this is, and,
I've seen it in Head Start with young kids.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
And
this
it's
is,
that they're not even 5 and they're already having way worse problems than I've ever had.
and let me tell you, friends, this is where the opportunity of the church community lies. I truly believe that. I truly believe that we can make a case for our church, really any church community, but our church community being an essential facet of the community, so that young people seeking guidance or seeking, friendship and care can see that church, our building, as a place of refuge.
A place of safety where the people are not judged for who they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what we've been talking about for a long time.
I think, oh yeah, Edith and Sharon, do you have the last words?
Well, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're
Is
fine.
it my turn?
It
Okay.
is. Yeah.
No, well, one thing I wanted to say about the subject that Kim brought up is that in today's society, there are tremendous economic pressures. And we cannot expect functioning, wonderful families where the mom stays home. That's the 1950s.
Yeah.
I know people, single moms, divorced, but not their fault, whatever happened, or the guy died or whatever, that have to hold 2 or 3 jobs to
Just to keep bread on the
support
table.
a
Yeah.
couple of children.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're right.
And
Right.
and they're hardly ever home, and the kids are latchkey, what we used to call the latchkey kids.
Yeah.
We need wages where a person can live,
Those are great points.
and then women making less money. What is that all about?
Yeah. I hear you. Unfortunately, these are problems that will have to wait for another Sunday.
Yes, I just wanted to throw that in as a
But,
consideration, that our society, there are these many women can't stay home.
it's true. You're absolutely right. Sharon, did you want to?
I wanted to throw out for the outreach for the UU to be a haven for young people. We need to
That's
be,
in the, yeah.
we need to be closer to the high school, the junior highs, and we need to provide them with transportation.
Fair enough.
Huge dilemmas to solve.
These are all good thoughts, and hopefully we can pick up on them in later discussions and church meetings. I had a blast today. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Great conversation for me. So I hope you guys have a lovely Sunday. Stay cool
Mhm.
and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.